Welcome to Talk Emes. This program is brought to you by Only Emes, a nonprofit organization promoting positive, secular, and humanistic values, skepticism and critical thinking skills to religious Jews, and providing supportive community for Jewish people seeking to lead individualistic lifestyles. Our program is interactive. We conduct it on webinar software online. And all you have to do is ask for invitation, send us an email, and then every episode that we conduct, you'll receive an email in advance with the web address to log in. You don't have to worry about webcam or audio. The program has a host and a co-host, and we're the only ones who have the ability to use our webcams and microphone during the program. So if you are eager to participate in any future program, please let us know. The organization's information, our email address, and our website will be in the description once this is on YouTube. But it's interactive. When you join, you can ask questions and you can make comments during our discussion. We incorporate it in the program. So if we're discussing a topic and you have a question about it, we will see the question come in. The other attendees can't see you, so privacy, is very important to us. So you'll just be logged in, and whatever you submit will be seen only by the presenters. And then we usually just conclude whatever we happen to be talking about, or we pause for a moment and we address questions as we see them and as we see fit. If we don't respond to a question immediately, it's usually because we're about to speak about that topic. And if this program and what the organization does in general, if these are things that you find valuable, if you believe in the same type of cause, we would appreciate it if you join as a member, which doesn't really cost anything. We appreciate any donations you can make. We also, it helps us if you vote up the videos that we have on YouTube, if you subscribe to the channel, because YouTube then makes the channel have a little bit more exposure and publicity, and the organization in general gets a little bit more exposure. So between our website and YouTube and our Google+, you can like our website. So there's a like button which links it to Facebook. All these things take very little effort, cost nothing, and they help us by sending. I guess what happens is we get more exposure. If Facebook sees something has more likes, it will present it to people a little bit more frequently. So all these things will help us, and donations help as well. There will be all this information and links to our site and to our mission statement, everything in the description of this YouTube video. Today's program is focusing on personal journeys, and this does not mean us specifically. The focus is why people in the Jewish community stop observing and believing. What makes them sometimes it's stopping their beliefs. Sometimes they don't believe anymore in either the rules or the divinity or God in general, and sometimes it is that they don't practice anymore. This is colloquially referred to as off the derech, and the question that we're addressing is why this happens. Partly because it's something we'd like to try to identify the different reasons why people do this. We have our own personal experiences, and we're very involved with the off the derech community in general, and we know a lot of times what the impetus is, but there are a variety of reasons. And beyond that, there is a very specific thing that we want to address, and that is that it's very common to see Orthodox people, but particularly it's usually people involved in Kiruv and outreach. It's usually people who are very, very devout believers and don't like the idea, for whatever reason, don't like the idea of people who leave the fold of Orthodox Judaism, and they don't, for whatever reason, don't believe or simply don't acknowledge that there are legitimate intellectual reasons for people to stop believing in the religion. There is a very common attitude that something must have traumatized you, or you don't like to have to live with the responsibilities that Orthodox Judaism imposes on you. So one of the most common attitudes expressed is that you either don't like the responsibility or something happened to you. It's very very seldom does a religious authority figure or leader, at least in public, recognize that this is for many, and I would say most, this is an intellectual realization or conclusion that a person comes to based on education, based on questioning their own beliefs. For myself, it happened a long time ago that something just clicked, that I no longer accepted that I don't have to have evidence to support my beliefs. And I no longer accepted that when I find challenges, I should simply believe that somehow there's a reason. I'm somewhat of a scientist by nature, and there's nothing that gets exempt from needing to be supported by evidence. This requirement applies to pretty much everything else, and we wouldn't be able to trust the conclusions that we have about nature, and we wouldn't be able to trust the decisions we make if we didn't follow evidence. So for a lot of people, there at some point becomes this this question: why am I believing what I'm believing just because I was taught? And once that inclination is there, and once that person does not allow it to simply get this pass from evidence and from critical thinking, it's then a journey. This is a journey I've undertaken. This is a journey many people have undertaken. There are other situations that make people leave Orthodox Judaism, but this is, at least in my experience, this is the majority. And so then we have the question: why is it that we have people who are always just dismissive? I'm sorry, we lost my co-host. Must have disconnected for some reason. He'll probably be back. But why is it that we have this constant dismissive and particularly disparaging attitude that you're leaving Orthodox observance and belief is somehow some sort of a fault or failure, whereas the truth is most people who do this view it as an achievement and are usually better off afterwards. What Saul was saying, and I apologize to the audience and also to anybody who will watch this later. He has some issues with his microphone on his computer, but yeah, I think that the gist of it is that if they acknowledge that, obviously, that if they admit or recognize that that people can intellectually scrutinize their beliefs and then conclude that they're not supported sufficiently by evidence, then it kind of offers them a challenge. The general idea I got from you is just simply that it's something that they then they can't respond to in a way that's satisfactory to people who are asking them for answers. I don't really know if that's what you were saying.
What it means. Can you hear this? What it means is that God failed to do his job.
Mm-hmm. Okay, to a certain extent, I guess, and that pretty much goes back to the same idea that they, they're supposedly speaking on behalf of God in a way, and yeah, and they then don't have anything to come back with, I suppose. But this is something that it's very common that we see. Um, I recently put together a couple of images from. I'm not going to put them on the screen, but essentially these are discussions that were had, and one of them we both saw recently, and it is a rabbi who, I'm not going to say any names or anything like that on this program, but is a rabbi um, who wrote online. There are over 2,000 kids off the derech today. They and their families are in pain. Let's daven for them in the coming high holy days. Now, firstly, stating that they and their families are in pain is presumption. If you have a personal relationship with one of those families and they've complained to you and they've come to you for advice saying that they're in pain because of their children being off the derech, that's one thing. I can't really accept that this rabbi has personally been contacted by 2,000 families asking, or the families of 2,000 kids asking, for advice and saying that they're in pain. Personally, members of this organization interact on a daily basis with many hundreds of people who, after going through this journey and after leaving Orthodoxy, are not in pain, are in fact much, much happier and more well off, and they have stated so explicitly. So there's something wrong with the presumption that everybody's in pain having left Orthodoxy. And there's also something strange about saying let's daven for them, because if why would you think that that's going to have any effect? This is individuals who have made intellectual journeys, and they have questioned their beliefs. They haven't simply decided one day their beliefs are false. They decided one day that they want to know if their beliefs are true. And they don't want to simply believe because somebody told them to do so. And one person responded, and this rabbi who posted this said that he would daven for this person, and then said, "I see you have problems with Yiddishkeit. Where did it start? Were you abused somehow?" This is not genuine concern. This is sanctimonious, condescending dismissal. Genuine concern would be to privately contact the person and ask. Publicly asking if he was abused is not concern. It's condescension and it's arrogance. And the fact is that this is so common. I have an additional one, and this one not by a rabbi, but just a layman, just a participant of some of the discussions we have online and some on Facebook. And this person was involved in this discussion where we were talking about the reasons each of us decided from an Orthodox upbringing to leave Orthodoxy, to stop practicing rituals, to stop believing in God, or any combination. It's not necessarily all. And this person who insisted, and I'm quoting here, "It's not logic that turned anyone off. It's emotional stress, lust to play, intense self-control that guides the brain to seek questions and deep psychology teachings." I don't know if the English is this person's primary language, but what they were trying to convey, and they went on to say further, although you won't admit it, all your, quote, questions are based upon your expectations, and most definitely all your expectations are based on your materialistic measures. And then went on to continue saying how much this person never really made this intellectual journey. Instead, is simply has too many desires and is giving into them. This is extremely typical and extremely inaccurate, and why they do it, it's easy to say that they say this because this way, if they continue to just perpetuate this notion, then all of Orthodoxy will just view us as these sad failures, and that maybe they're trying to protect their flock by giving this answer, and then so the people who look up to them will simply share the same attitude, and just don't bother even trying to understand it. But the fact of the matter is they're doing their own people a disservice, because when people find out what the reality is, and when people actually sit down, not rabbis, because they won't do this, but when your average Orthodox Jewish person sits down with a friend or family member who went through this journey, and and the test for evidence to support their beliefs failed them, and they realized that from their point of view that their beliefs were not true, it does make sense to your average, mostly modern, but your average Orthodox Jewish person at the very least can understand that this is a legitimate behavior, and certainly they recognize that there are challenges. And then to them, they have this same attitude toward their rabbi or whatever authority figure made these kinds of remarks. They then now know that that rabbi is either mistaken or a liar. So in that respect, people like this rabbi who I was quoting before, who do this, they may get a good feeling out of insulting and dismissing, these people, but they're doing themselves a disservice. Right. And then what Saul put in, because his microphone is not working too well, this is a very specific idea that most of us are aware. What the beliefs are is that God, and in our religion it's Hashem, wants us to apprehend his existence and wants us to worship him and love him. But if he allegedly created us and gave us this intellect and a rational and educated person who thinks critically and has a good amount of education, in enough disciplines that they can test these beliefs, if they're not going to make this conclusion and continue to believe because they've confirmed their beliefs, so then either God failed or he doesn't exist, and either of these is not something that a rabbi or any kind of kiruv agent or anybody in a position of so-called authority will want to deal with. And the fact of the matter is, many of us who have made this journey not only have personally come to this conclusion, but we have continued to bring these questions to people who are in the job of answering. It's either kiruv or it's rabbis who are answering questions to congregants or community members. And when you get to a certain kind of sophistication, they don't have an answer. And I think that it's more comfortable for them to simply dismiss and insult and let go one person rather than have to deal with that challenge. So let go of that person, and this way you go back to the people who've never who've never gotten this sophisticated with their beliefs, and the people who are just believing and participating and going through the ritual, the easily manageable people. So in the interest of this particular episode of our program, I actually sent out some questionnaires and conducted a few interviews, and based on the few responses that I have, it's evident that the majority of the people who are raised Orthodox and at some point go off the derech, as that term goes. Do so because at some point they realize that they believe certain things, but there are problems with those beliefs, and they either go through the exercise of studying a lot of science, and then looking at the challenges. There are a lot of them, and we're obviously going to devote other shows on them, but let's just leave it that there are intellectual, scientific, and philosophical and moral challenges to Orthodox Judaism and the Torah, and they realize that they've been believing in things because they were raised and taught to believe those things, but they know that the reliability of these disciplines that they're studying doesn't fail in general, and therefore they come to the conclusion their beliefs are not true. In most cases, this is how it happens, and this is based on knowing and interacting with thousands of people who belong to this community in general, and yet there's this attitude that it's somehow a falling or a failure, and the reality is that that's not true. So the question is, why do we have this attitude among kiruv professionals, rabbis, and even a lot of just Orthodox people? Are they uninformed? Are they not aware of these challenges? Are they not aware that a lot of people make this intellectual journey? Or are they aware of it, and insulting and denigrating these people is a way for them to avoid having to publicly acknowledge that there are these challenges? So that's the question. And I would really love for this rabbi who posted that nonsense online, or any rabbi, kiruv professional, anybody who says that people who go off the derech do so because they're failing, or they have these desires and they just want to, do sin or do things that they're not allowed to, and they're failing at their responsibilities. I would really love to speak with them and bring these questions to them. I know that my co-host Saul has done this in the past, and was simply asked to not bother him again, and there's a couple of times. So try telling a little bit about those instances when you did bring these questions to people.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just speak at a normal level and just let it.
I've had hundreds of conversations with rabbis, and I find that they don't have answers, and they can't have answers because they're wrong. They don't understand. They don't have the knowledge. The average rabbi or synagogue rabbi is not educated, and the ones who are, which are the rabbis with PhDs who teach in Yeshiva University and other universities, they understand. They have trouble themselves. They have trouble with the religion themselves. They largely keep it to themselves.
Your microphone is broken. I'm sorry, and I just don't want to. I don't want to have that this should end up being really awful for people to have this to watch this later, or even people who are in the audience right now. But yeah, what Saul was trying to talk about was his experience communicating with very scholarly rabbis, and the challenges, the intellectual challenges, the moral challenges, the scientific challenges to Orthodox Judaism are known. Yes, there are a lot of people, rabbis, kibbutz professionals, just regular Orthodox Jewish individuals who have never really made these, considered these things, who have never really gone through this exercise. We can talk about the morality represented in the Torah. We can talk about the tale of the God flooding, the Mabul, the Noah's flood, colloquially known. And the fact that it didn't happen, it cannot possibly have happened. And it's not just claims of fact; it's morality represented. It's logical and philosophical problems, but without going too deeply into those, because the material of these issues are really for another conversation. But there are a lot of people who just don't really think about these things, but bringing these questions to people who do, to rabbis, to very scholarly religious authorities, you have a few different responses. You have the response, don't bother me and go away. Right, shul and yeshiva rabbis. The rabbi who's standing up in shul, or the ones who just teach in yeshivas, they just generally don't, they're not even equipped to respond to you with these things. And that's not their fault. But then they almost invariably respond with the same kind of attitude. This dismissive, you make no sense, you obviously just either hate God, or something happened, or you just don't like living like this anymore, but don't tell me that you've come to the conclusion that it's not true. Well, because they don't have the education, or don't necessarily the education that the person going through this journey does. University rabbis, kinds of people with substantial education, secular degrees, know that the problem exists, but there's nothing they can do. Their beliefs and their lifestyle and their whole way of life depends on keeping the practice and the observance and the community alive. And so it's simply something that they're not going to really talk about, because what are they going to say? They're going to get up in public and announce, yes, the stories in the Torah depicting certain events cannot possibly have been true, and I acknowledge this because I'm not just a layman. I have a PhD in archaeology. They're not going to do this, because what's the point? They're, number one, going to immediately lose all their respect. They're going to also lose their credibility. They're going to probably lose their job, and their position, both professionally and socially, is going to be destroyed. Intellectually, inside, do they know that these challenges exist? Yes. Do they wholeheartedly believe in God and wholeheartedly believe that these challenges somehow can be reconciled, even though they don't know? Who knows? You can't know unless unless somebody's going to be completely honest with you. Right, and one of the people in the audience says this is something that happens in politics as well. A politician is not going to tell the honest truth as they see it if it means the end of not only their career, but the end of their family and social life. So that's just, it's the situation where those people, at least inside, know this. And I think the best outcome right now would not necessarily be to expect or ask them to publicly acknowledge that or at least to publicly actually discuss the details of these problems, because then they're digging a really big hole that they can't get out of. But those people should not be engaging in this kind of this disparaging, obnoxious insult that we've been describing. Right. So, and Saul just said that one Orthodox rabbi who was an Assyriologist just wouldn't even talk to him by email, would not communicate with him in any way. He just wanted no part of the discussion. So where we stand now is that we have many, many thousands and thousands of individuals like us, well-educated, college-educated, many, often educated in like myself, in sciences, uh, archaeology, biology, sometimes in medicine, astronomy, cosmology, and we, at one point, just it occurs to us that our beliefs don't get a pass. We rely on these studies and these methodologies for so many things in our life. Um, why are we believing in what we believe in? Why are we really believing in it? Is it actually true or not? And that's a major step. Just to come to that, just to have the inclination to want to make that test is a major, major step that many people don't go through. But people like this who come to the conclusion after going through these analyses and these studies and testing their beliefs, who realize that they no longer believe it because they can't, because it's not only not supported by evidence, but there's massive evidence that completely eliminates the possibility of certain events and certain um, claims that exist in the Torah and in all kinds of biblical scripture. Then there's, beyond just scientific evidence, there's also morality that they find quite troubling. And so you have these many thousands of people who have gone through this, and yet in the public eye, among hero professionals, among rabbis and everything, there's this just basic attitude that we should daven for them. They're poor lost souls. Um, and even worse, frequently just downright insults. These people obviously cannot. We're failing to to withstand the urges, their gates of horror, whatever you want to call it. Um, they're failures. They gave in to the desire to live in a way that Hashem forbids, things like that. And then also, or they were abused. They're angry against the community. They hate God, things like that. We've all heard it. I'm sure a lot of people watching this program or participating, and a lot of people who will see it later know very well what this kind of this attitude is, and most likely have experienced it themselves. Um, the the I guess what we want to do is how is that affecting us? Not necessarily that we want to try to like convince people, the way we see things, or the way we believe or disbelieve, but having the notion that anybody around us, family and friends and society in general, or within the Jewish Orthodox Jewish community, are just going to view us as these sad failures, or these burnt people, or these bitter, traumatized people. That's something we could do about. We can do something about. That's something we can change. We don't have to go and deconvert people, or like missionaries try to turn everybody into atheists, or at least agnostics. But to bring awareness of the idea that we didn't just fail. We, in fact, from our point of view, we succeeded in learning the truth. And this is something that's important, because before you're going to get acceptance and tolerance and a lot more open communication, you have to clear out these negative perceptions that people have. And I think the biggest sources of these perceptions are the rabbinic leaders, the Kira professionals, the people who usually know where our position is, and it's just they can't go admitting that this is legitimate, because then they're losing credibility, and then they're going to have a mountain of questions that they can't answer. They're asking for more problems for their personal and professional life. So this is the goal. The goal is to open up communication, that people should be aware that these many thousands of people that this rabbi said that he wants people to daven for don't need or want people praying for them because they have no problem. They're in fact most of the time happier and better off and living happier lives and feel like they're being more true and honest with themselves now that they've come to this realization. So if we're going to have this dismissive attitude, um, that's somebody who is not only just ignoring or dismissing people, but they're insulting, they're slandering an entire community out of fear because they're afraid of the fact that we have a very legitimate challenge to these beliefs. If anybody who's participating now would like to submit comments or questions, I would definitely appreciate it. I want this to be as interactive as possible, and we have a few people attending. So please, by all means, if you have any questions, and I'm going to bring up some of these questionnaires in the meantime. This one person who had submitted a questionnaire to me was even at one point almost a cure professional himself. He was somebody who had been contacted many times by people for what is it called, for motivation. I don't remember what the term is, but and he was kind of like a go-to person for doubters. But in the end, he started studying and testing his own beliefs, and that person is now is no longer a believer. So it's no, I'm trying to find that term, but this is somebody who was in a smicha program. Okay, right. So okay, I'm going to take a couple of comments here. Somebody has posted, first of all, Saul was that the RCA has already accepted evolution in general. Yes, evolution and the fact of the flood being impossible. These are things that, yes, have been publicly acknowledged by some big authorities. And this is interesting because I actually brought this to the attention of somebody that Saul and I both know, and I said, when I was talking to him about evolution and the flood and things like that, and I said, the RCA published an article admitting that the flood is not a story to be taken literally, and this person said, well, the RCA, I don't hold by the RCA. This is not. So it goes beyond even having rabbinic authorities publicly acknowledging these challenges. If you have subsects of the Jewish community that then already don't consider them authoritative, it becomes an even bigger problem. Another one of our participants said it's a defense mechanism. Here, I could just say I think it's completely a defense mechanism. They can't stand the possibility they might actually be wrong and that anyone could reject those beliefs and still be happy. Indeed, there's this challenge to their philosophy. If somebody can actually be happy and be a really good person and live a great life without orthodoxy, but beyond just the fact of it happening, you see the defense mechanism kicking in. They'll say, of course you're happy. You get to do whatever you want with your body. You get to steal, and you get to have all the kinds of sexual relations that you want, some of which are sins. So of course you're happy. You're living a life of hedonism. I mean, when I don't, it's almost laughable for somebody to present this, because you can hardly take it seriously. I mean, you really think that all of these people are now that this is our lifestyle. So it's very it's kind of like caged into a corner defense mechanism. It's like a last resort, and it's like a tantrum in a way. So we see it for what it is. Sure, and the people like the RCA rabbis who recognize the flood was impossible. So you get the people who are a little bit more to the right of them who don't say, well, then I guess they're no longer devout Orthodox Jews because they're now starting to cave. I don't know if they consider it pressure. What do they consider it? Social pressure, peer pressure? Um, One of our participants said, I think there's a lot of inertia for both lay people and clergy to change their beliefs regardless of evidence, mostly because of the pressure and the strong ties to the community. And again, this really isn't about wanting to force or impose upon all Orthodox people this journey that we've gone through. I feel very fulfilled and proud when I do see that happen, when I see somebody who says, you know, I was Orthodox, I was in smicha, I was very religious and everything, but you know what, one day I had to decide whether it's true or not, and I had to study and examine and test it, because I can't know one way or another until I put it to the test. I feel proud of when I see that, but it's not the goal of this discussion. The goal of this discussion is that at the very least, we don't have this perspective, this image, uh, this portrayal within the Orthodox community of us as these are failures, these are people who are angry or bitter or hurt or whatever. This is always negative. It's always insulting and degrading, and we know how sad that kind of attitude is and how sorry that attitude is, because we have a very legitimate perspective, regardless of whether we're right or wrong. We have a legitimate perspective, and we see this as an obvious either defense or a passive aggressive attack. Because if you discredit somebody who is a challenge to you, then you don't have to worry about people listening to them. And I think maybe that to a certain extent that's the case. And the RCA, right? And the RCA, the people who publicly admitted that these are rabbis with degrees, advanced degrees, doctorates, and so they're coming out and finally acknowledging. I mean, people who were scholars acknowledging the reality of some of the things that we're talking about, the flood not happening. Um, and it's hard to just say that somebody with a PhD in a science or something doesn't know what he's talking about. But again, it can always go back to, sure, there's they're slipping, they're letting their Yetzer Hara get the best of them or something. Um, I'm just reading some of the comments, and a lot of people. There has to be some alternative community to make these questions legitimate. Right. If Rav Moshe Feinstein got a PhD and came to believe in evolution, many would have said he's no longer Orthodox. Um, Correct, because Orthodoxy has this grip. The I think the secret is that even Orthodoxy has evolved a little bit. We have modern Orthodox, we have the more progressive Orthodox community, and there are a lot of things that they recognize that 100 years ago would have been unconscionable. So even that happens, and I think that that's what we're trying to achieve. That this progress continue, and but a very, very substantial part um, of the Orthodox community is steadfast and is not progressive. And the truth is that I think I see the modern and progressive movements kind of being thinned out, because it's one way or another these days. It seems to be going in that direction, one way or another. Um, Anybody who is going to challenge any of the traditional uh, doctrine and beliefs is then out. So the idea of having a progressive community is a difficult one, because um, there is a standard, I guess, or there's a boundary out of which you don't go. Some of the comments here, you're right. Right. I don't know that it's, I don't, so one of the participants has said that off the therapist is threatening because we provide an alternative. That may be the case. I don't know how much it is threatening. I don't really know that necessarily Orthodox rabbis would necessarily see this as some form of threat by like providing an alternative. But I do think that, yeah, as this community grows and becomes more well known, certainly knowing that it's available, that exists, and that people are welcome, certainly poses a threat, because it's something that provides not necessarily an alternative, but it provides acceptance. One of the biggest restraints holding people in Orthodoxy is the fact that they're not going to be accepted anywhere if they leave. This community does provide that, and in that sense, sure, I think that maybe it is a threat. It's a threat to people who want to continue growing the Orthodox community, and people who have an interest in being part of that, the leadership of that community, and in the authority of that community. Yeah. A couple of the comments about some people who have degrees. Yeah, listen, an education doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be a believer. It's common enough. One of our participants, hold on a second. I have somebody who's saying a lot of things, and I wanted to know if they want to get on the microphone. Okay, so I have to enable it, and you might get some kind of a thing which you might get something prompting you to allow it.
Hi.
Hello.
What I was saying that there's the sense of a community that's really, really powerful emotionally for people who live in a community, and without an alternative, it's really hard to take a step of independence. So people who might be questioning, which I did for like 20 years, most of my adult life, still get pulled back into trying to look for answers, or trying to justify some very irrational beliefs in order to stay in that community. And I think one of the things that helped me to finally quote unquote see the light was seeing that there were other communities I could be part of that weren't requiring my belief system to be compromised.
Yeah.
That weren't requiring me to, weren't requiring me to subjugate my rationality to their, in order to be part of their group.
Right. Yeah, in order to remain Orthodox, you know, I mean, there's only so many questions internally that you can have, and until you don't want to necessarily have to live in such a conforming way, especially when you no longer believe that you have to. And a community like Orthodoxy, you can't have your own recipe. If you're not Orthodox, and meaning if you don't keep everything, then you're nothing and you don't belong, and that's a big issue. Yeah, there's the audio has a problem, but for the most part, we're getting it's working for the most part. One of the comments posted was, you know, when you bring up a question, but it's not just that. When you bring up a question of things like tragedy, you know, be it to people or to animal life, you may have gotten this response, yeah, you're just angry at God. It's not the only response, but those are things that a person can't necessarily answer. So there's this just an instant reversion to, well, because I don't know why, but I don't have to know why. It doesn't have to make sense to me. And the one thing that never asked themselves is why. Why doesn't it have to make sense to me? When am I satisfied with something not making sense to me, but still simply accepting that it's true? You have reason to trust things. Your doctor or a mechanic or something tells you something needs to be done. You don't necessarily understand what's going on, but you trust them. But that's because you know what kind of education they have. You know that it's consistent and that other people form the same conclusions and would make the same diagnosis because they've gotten the same education. A person, it's something very special that has to happen and click inside someone's mind to say, why has it been satisfactory to me to simply accept something for, somehow it's okay and it makes sense even though I don't understand it. That little change in mindset is something really, really remarkable, and it's strange because you'd think that it's just a matter of understanding or comprehension, but it's not. There's something that happens, particularly when somebody's been thoroughly indoctrinated in a religious belief. There's something that happens that this defense continues to go up. I don't have to understand it. I'm not God. Obviously, he's got his reasons for doing things. Somebody who just at some point, and we've all, this is something we've all gone through. Was it willpower? Was it just pure intellect? I mean, at some point we realized I'm just not okay with that anymore. It has to make sense to me because I'm an intelligent person. We have a lot invested emotionally. Yes. Well, I mean, that depends. When I stopped believing because I realized I was wrong, emotionally it didn't do anything to me because belief never really defined who I was. It was never something that made me happy or not happy. I simply believed and observed because that was the life I was simply raised in. When I realized I was wrong, I started to live differently, and I will say better. And I don't know how that works or why, but I started to be a better person. You don't understand God's ways. How are you sure He's good? Right, right. So this is right. There's definitely right because the book says He's good, and you believe the book, and etc. etc. This is now we're getting into something that I would definitely want to discuss at length for a for a future. And all the things that we're posting right now that you guys are posting, definitely for a future program would be a great topic. But for now, we've covered what we've covered, and this is the challenge right now. Is this attitude that you see? It's just it's not beneficial in any way, and in fact, it's something that, like ourselves, it doesn't bother me personally, it doesn't harm me personally, but I just find it's not only insulting, but the last thing we need is to be undermined. You know, it's difficult enough for somebody who goes off the derech or goes through this personal journey. It's difficult enough to for some people to be accepted by their own family. But if they're going to make any progress in communicating their mindset to the people who still are part of Orthodox belief, that's a challenge in and of itself. That's difficult enough to find acceptance. What we don't need is this smear campaign, the way you see it in politics. And that's something that really needs to be put to a stop, because that's undermining the chance for people who have changed in this way to still have a peaceful relationship with their family and friends. It's just slander, plain and simple. We're basically wrapping up for today's program. I did want to say that next at some point next week, I don't know if it's going to be Monday, but we're going to have our next program, the 5th program, and the topic of that will be logical fallacies, tricks of the trade. So it's going to focus on it's going to mostly logical fallacies and in the kind of conversations we've been discussing, where we bring these challenges to the attention of a rabbi or somebody who, give me an answer. I think it'll be very enlightening to people to understand where the tricks and sometimes they're debate tactics, but in a sense we're not talking about a debate, we're just talking about people asking questions. But to understand what logical fallacies are and to understand, recognize them when you see them, it's very, very enlightening, because when one of these things is used on you, you know how to recognize it for what it is, and you don't have to be satisfied with a bad answer. Right. So that's it for today, and I really appreciate everybody who joined. And where's it there? Right. Okay. So we're going to go into a lot of the most common ones. We're going to explain how they work and explain the actual flaws in reasoning, and use examples to give you like an idea to relate to it. Common conversational examples. Anyway, so wrapping up for today. Thank you everybody who attended, and when this goes on YouTube, there will be plenty of links to our organization, and our YouTube channel has all the previous programs. We're going to be running many of these in the future, and we have a few other programs that are going on. We have a support group that was started, so anybody's interested, all you got to do is send us an email. And again, please like the videos and subscribe, and it'll help us gain exposure and awareness of the organization and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. And a lot of people share the desire to see these things accomplished, but we really just need to gather the community together. We have to find as many people as we can who will proudly associate with our mission, and have them join. So thank you, everybody.